What's up, everybody? This is the Act Man here, and today we're going to discuss quite possibly the most heated topic amongst the Halo community. A topic so fiercely argued across the stars, internet forums, a subject debated throughout history and time itself. I'm talking, of course, about which Halo game had the best multiplayer. So grab yourself a nice hot cup of joe or a cold glass of whiskey, because we're going to take a look at all the different multiplayers throughout these mainline Halo games to find out which one was the best. Now, without even getting 30 seconds into this video, there's going to be people in the comments throwing out their favorites, so you know what? Let's play a little game. Comment which one you think is the best, or do a list from best to worst. Then when you finish watching the video, edit your comment and let me know if your thoughts have changed or if they haven't. There are so many variables that make up a Halo multiplayer, it might seem daunting to really look at them all in depth, but I believe I've narrowed down the most important categories here. 1. Map design, map selection, and movement. 2. Weapons, vehicles, balancing, and controls. 3. Variety, game modes, playlist, custom game options, forge. 4. Skill gap and learning curve. 5. Innovation, DLC, and time of release. This basically means, how did the game launch? What was the gaming industry like at the time? Did the multiplayer innovate in a positive way overall? And was the DLC, if it had any, of good quality and worth the price? And number 6, the overall fun factor. We'll judge each game based on these focal points and give them a grade from 1 to 10. Of course, this will be entirely, what's the word again? Subjective. So try not to get your jetpack all in a bunch. At the end, I'll stack them up against each other and give you the order from worst to best. I'm not claiming to be an expert game designer, I'm not claiming to have all the answers, but I will say I have played each one of these games a hefty amount, and I think I'm in a position to judge them. I'm down for all types of discussion, because I could very well be wrong with some of the things I say. One last thing. We're going to be taking off those nostalgia goggles, and I'm going to look at each game as objectively as I possibly can. So let's set up a LAN party, get on Xbox Live for the first time, smash people with a hammer, armor lock like a little bitch, spawn with a bolt shot, and ground pound our way straight into this. First up, Halo Combat Evolved. This is where it all started. Not just the Halo series, but console FPS games in general. Without CE, who knows how long it would have taken for first-person shooters to actually become viable on consoles. Because of the ground it broke, the integration of LAN parties and 4-player split screen, Combat Evolved gets an automatic 10 in Category 5. As the Xbox version never had any DLC, and was released during a time when games were sold when they were actually complete. You remember those days? Halo 1 had 13 maps, plus 6 on the PC version, so to be clear, I'm judging the original Xbox version, as PC did bring a new type of Warthog along with the flamethrower and fuel rod, which were great additions, but again not in the original. Now, seeing as how this game could have flopped and had no Xbox Live to support its multiplayer, I believe those are the reasons why Combat Evolved has some of the most unique maps in the franchise. No other Halo game has a level like Chiron TL-34, with its maze-like design, the many rooms and teleporters, or boarding action with 2 vertical platforms separated by an abyss. The game had a great variety of small, middle, and large-scale maps. CE had a heavy emphasis on power weapons, power-ups, and map control. Only issue is spawning could be pretty bad at times. And granted, that could be because I'm playing the MCC right now. Even though this was the new frontier, the spawning problems become especially apparent when going against skilled players. The only real issue with the maps, through no fault of their own, was actually getting enough people to play on them, the way they were intended. So unless you knew 15 other people and understood how to hook up a LAN party, chances are with only 4 people you'd just stick to the small to medium maps, meaning the bigger ones were hardly played. Because of these potential unplayable maps and the spawning, we gotta knock 2 points off, giving it 8 out of 10 in Category 1. What made CE unique from other shooters was the incorporation of vehicles. Once again, moving into new territory for the FPS genre. There was nothing more fun than getting 3 people to ride around in a warthog, shooting everything that moves, and still to this day that is true. The weapons were all fun to use and unique, but of course, and some might disagree, the balancing was far from perfect. In a normal game, if you spawn with 2 weapons and every time you switch to your secondary, that's a problem with the balancing. In multiplayer, the pistol is just way better than the assault rifle, even up close. Of course, you can't talk vehicles without bringing up their hilarious physics. I die laughing every time a vehicle with the slightest momentum possible manages to kill someone. You might think I should knock a point off or two, but I consider this a part of Combat Evolved's gameplay and charm. You gotta do your goddamn best to not touch a moving vehicle. Controls are fluid, responsive, and to this day feel quite good. Category 2, 9 out of 10. As far as variety goes, Combat Evolved had so many different ways to play. Side note, one of my favorite parts about CE is how hilarious the custom game descriptions are. I mean, instead of writing exactly what changes based on the settings, somebody actually took the time to write through and add some character here. Compared to later games, the 5 modes and custom options might seem primitive, but this was the first in the series, and I feel the same way about its variety back then as I do now. I never felt like the game didn't have enough content. It has and always will be a fun as hell party game to play with your friends. Category 3, 10 out of 10. Playing this game with your buddies, chances are nobody is going to be a pro, and it'll all be good fun. However, if you play against someone that knows the game, someone that can do this type of shit, well, you're as good as fucked. The skill gap and learning curve can be brutal, but this is only an issue that arises on MCC. The game can be super competitive and also great casual fun. It's easy to pick up and extremely hard to be a pro. Category 4, 9 out of 10. Combat Evolved, as I said before, is a fucking masterpiece, and the multiplayer is no exception. Not since StarCraft Brood War has a game's multiplayer been so old yet so replayable and fun. I'd give the multiplayer a 10 out of 10, but realistically, I think back to those days of hopelessly wishing I could play the bigger maps with more than 4 people, the frustration of the overpowered pistol, and to be true to myself, Combat Evolved gets a 9 out of 10 in the fun factor.
Real pretty. Friend of yours?
No, we just met.
Halo 2, The Older Brother. No doubt those of us that played this game on OG Xbox Live back in the day have memories so good they're hard to describe. Halo 2, like the original, innovated in a way that changed the gaming industry, this time for online play. Halo 2 basically launched Xbox Live, nobody can deny that. And if you think I'm being generous here, the DLC map packs were made free just 2 months after they were released, with the bonus map pack being free outright. That type of generosity is unheard of in today's gaming industry. It should be noted that players at launch had trouble finding games. Now, I don't have personal experience on the matter, and I know there were many bugs in-game like rocket sword flying, super bounces, but I think because this was stepping into new territory at the time, it was gonna be a bit rocky. Still, Halo 2 narrowly avoids a perfect score in this category because of its launch issues. 9.5 out of 10 in Category 5. So without the DLC, Halo 2 had 12 maps at release. And talk about variety. You got remakes of the classic Blood Gulch, there was Elongation based off of Longest, all-time favorites would be added like Zanzibar, Ivory Tower, Lockout, Ascension, and the almighty Midship. Having been remade 4 times in later games, this map is an all-time classic. Not to mention my favorite and coincidentally most underrated map in Halo 2, Backwash, a remake of the final section of 343 Guilty Spark. The map variety is nothing short of spectacular, building upon the foundation the first game set and making the bigger maps more accessible through Xbox Live. 10 out of 10 in Category 1. Halo 2 expanded the sandbox for vehicles, weapons, turrets, and also added one of the greatest features known to man, dual wielding. There's something just so badass about holding 2 guns at the same time. I don't know why more games don't do this, but there's something about Halo 2's gameplay that's just so smooth. The control is basically perfect. It plays so well, and back then, a game this fluid mixed with online play was quite impressive, although ghost melees were a problem. I absolutely loved being able to pilot a Wraith and the Spectre. Though not utilized as much in multiplayer, Covenant-themed game types were a nice change of pace, and the addition of playable elites opened up a lot of doors for creativity. Balancing was a bit more off this time. Rocket launcher was basically a guaranteed kill against vehicles, the sword had insane range and infinite ammo, and modded controllers, button combos, and exploits were rampant. Dual wielding some weapons was good in campaign, but in multiplayer, Category 2, 9 out of 10. The variety was expanded upon in every way. More custom game options, more modes, and a nice selection of playlists. Race was left out, which was a bummer, but not too terrible a loss considering it was pretty archaic in Combat Evolved. Not much to say here. The game improved and added on to what was offered in the first. 10 out of 10, Category 3. Now the skill gap in Halo 2 is pretty big. Many will argue button combos are part of the game, and I kind of agree. But to the casual player, they wouldn't have known or understood them, meaning that if you could pull off some of these ridiculous combos, you'd have a huge advantage over those that couldn't. There was more than just the BXR, alright? And this could really suck the fun out of the game for new players because these mechanics are not told or shown to them. So people would get destroyed in a flash and not have the slightest clue why. This happened to me a lot when I was younger, and it could be very frustrating, making the learning curve especially brutal this time around. But on the flip side, this was another layer of depth in Halo's gameplay that made the competitive side thrive, and made it so entertaining to watch. Category 4, 8 out of 10. Halo 2 has one of the greatest multiplayers of all time, improving what the first game set up and adding on to the variety. There's something so hilariously fun about having a needler-only fight, or swords-only. Assault was a great game mode, and Halo 2 offered a lot of asymmetric game types. You know, one bomb, one flag. Just like the original, this multiplayer is fun no matter how many years have passed since its release. Really, the only downside is how oppressive the game could be to casual players, and of course the launch issues. Even playing custom games now on MCC, I think it's way more fun to play without the combos. But that's just me. Because of this, Halo 2 dodges a perfect fun factor and gets a 9 out of 10 overall.
Would it help if I said please?
Halo 3, the record setter. I don't think there's any doubt that just about everyone loves Halo 3's multiplayer. I mean, how could you not? But on the real, Halo 3 broke so many records on release, and there's a reason for that, so let's take a closer look. Map variety for Halo 3 is kinda tricky, as this game launched with fewer maps than both of the previous ones. Snowbound and Isolation, for reasons I never quite understood, would be viewed as the two ugly ducklings amongst Halo fans. On a positive note, the game did remake some older maps, but Bungie made them in a way that they basically became entirely new ones with the same formula. Guardian is the same style of map as Lockout, Valhalla is a different take on Blood Gulch, Narrows once again being reminiscent of Elongation and Longest, and my personal favorite map out of all the games, Sand Trap, because those two elephants offered so many awesome, unique moments in gaming, and to this day I've not seen or heard of a map quite like Sand Trap. Halo 3's map design was so creative, with each level offering a different type of experience. Man cannons and mongooses added fun ways to traverse the map. Movement overall was pretty solid and simple. Although I personally think every map at release was good, a lot of fans didn't, meaning the selection of good maps was roughly 9. But matchmaking was vastly improved this time around with a simple system, the veto. Don't like a map? Veto it, and hopefully you get one you do like. Had Halo 3 launched with 2 more high-quality maps, especially Foundry, I'd give it a 10, and without the veto system, it'd be 8. So naturally, Category 1, 9 out of 10. The sandbox and balancing were at its best in Halo 3. Older weapons had been updated and refined to work better. We got the Gravity Hammer, Spartan Laser, Hornet, the Mongoose, and probably the coolest vehicle, the Chopper. Heavy weapons were added, giving the game another layer of depth, and equipment, though not perfect, was a welcome and fun addition that spiced up the gameplay. One of the biggest issues people had was with the battle rifle. I admit, back in the day I was accustomed to Halo 2, and this time around, the battle rifle threw me off. I felt like my shots should have been hitting my opponents when they weren't, and this was because the change from hit scan to projectile really changed the mechanics of the weapon. Seeing how it's the universal go-to gun, this was a huge hurdle for many players to overcome and understand. The control wasn't quite as good as Halo 2, and I'm sure most people had the same problem I did of throwing out their equipment when they meant to reload, as the 360 controller had 2 bumpers which took a lot of time getting used to. The field of view for some was too close, but overall the gameplay is great, weapon balance was refined to near perfection, everything had a level of counterplay to it, and the game offered a stunning amount of new vehicles, weapons, and sandbox elements to play around with. Category 2, 10 out of 10. The variety of gameplay options that Halo 3 offered is something very few games have managed to achieve. Not only had the previous modes returned, they also added VIP and fan favorite Infection. Also for fan service, and as a nod to Red vs. Blue, Bungie made Griffball a full-fledged game mode, adding it into the Action Sack playlist. Along with massive additions to custom game options. You could tweak and change anything. This would be good enough on its own, but Bungie came out with something incredible. Forge. No, not that guy. This. In my opinion, the most important addition the Halo series ever had. What you could play in Halo 3 was only limited to your imagination, and theater was almost equally as important, but not really relevant to multiplayer. Though it did allow people to create their own videos, montages, or just save their favorite clips. This was Halo's community at its absolute peak. With so many things to do, game modes to play, the variety Halo 3 offered was the reason it's one of the most beloved games in the series. Of course, the online portion of the game had several playlists, a ranking system with XP for competitive players, armor customization, achievements, the list goes on and on. Category 3, 10 out of 10. In terms of skill gap and learning curve, this is when Halo was once again at its best, in my opinion. The nerfs to the BR made it so cross-mapping people wasn't as easy as it was with the pistol and battle rifle in Halo 2. The limit to 2 nades each lowered the amount of grenade spam, but the game was still very competitive, and it wasn't as punishing as the last 2. It was more about knowing who to shoot, when, and from what position, rather than who could exploit bad spawns or button combos the best. Players could go into Forge to see everything about the map, where weapons spawn, how long the timer is, where players respawn. All this important information about every single map was available to everyone, so if you did your research, you'd have a leg up. Your average or mediocre player could, in almost all cases, contribute to the team, yet a person who knew what they were doing could still kick some serious ass. It's very difficult to make a game both accessible and fun on a casual and competitive level, and Halo 3 nailed that perfectly. Category 4, 10 out of 10. As I said earlier, Halo 3 made massive innovations with Forge, theater, armor customization, and multiplayer ranking. There's no doubt the game brought with it many good changes, and at its release it was one of, if not the best game on the market. So its time of release was great, it didn't suffer from any game-breaking issues as far as I remember, but it's when we get the DLC, that's when things get a bit muddled. You see, Halo 2's map pack not only brought 9 new maps, 2 months later, those were made free, but it also updated the game for those who didn't have a connection to Xbox Live or the internet. Halo 3, on the other hand, had 4 map packs, each priced at $10. Now, many people didn't have a problem with paying for these maps. I didn't, as they are all quite good and expanded upon Halo 3's gameplay opportunities, but at this point, it really seemed like Microsoft was milking Halo 3 for all it was worth. A lot of people were upset, and even RB and the Chief had a meaningful discussion on it.
Do you think the maps were worth $10?
Yeah, who doesn't have $10? I wipe my ass with $10.
That's not what I asked.
I think a big concern was Halo 3 didn't launch with a dedicated Forge map. You know, just a blank canvas that could take advantage of the new feature. It wasn't until the Heroic map pack came out that they even offered that, and you had to pay for it. I think the biggest concern was the more maps that came out, the more segmented the population became. You'd be locked out of certain playlists if you didn't pay for them. Halo 3 did nearly everything right, but for DLC, they really did piss a lot of people off. Still, the innovations made across the board make me give it a 9 out of 10 in Category 5. Overall, Halo 3 offers some of the best FPS multiplayer experiences ever. It has loads of content, so many ways to play, and there is something for everyone, be it competitive, casual, map creation, video production. Maps like Last Resort were so intense when playing One Bomb or One Flag. Sand Trap was one of the best the series had to offer. There's so many reasons, and I can't list them all, that make me give Halo 3 a perfect 10 out of 10 fun factor.
They must love the smell of Bulgari. Yeah, I'm doing a little product placement. I gotta get paid too.
Halo Reach, the finale. And now we come to Bungie's last and most controversial addition in the Halo franchise. This is where a lot of people thought they dropped the ball, but many others loved it for its return to the more traditional formula found in the first game. But let's go ahead and put Reach under the microscope. Map design and selection is definitely not Reach's strong suit. Don't get me wrong, I think the maps themselves are great, but there's a few critical problems here. First off, the game only launched with 9 multiplayer maps. Add on to this, 2 of those are remakes, and it doesn't look good at first glance. Although the game had 17 maps total, including the firefight ones, the biggest issue is all these locations are ripped straight from the campaign. It's not a bad idea to have a few maps like this, but that doesn't make it okay for the entire selection to be like that. Gamers were seeing and playing through the same locations in the campaign, firefight, and multiplayer, and that can get pretty tiring. Second issue is the Spartan abilities radically changed the way each player moves around, so the maps had to be made for campaign and multiplayer, which then had to be balanced with sprint, jetpacks, evade. All this shit had to be taken into account, and it overcomplicated the design. The game got rid of the veto system and instead added straight up voting, which meant oftentimes you'd be replaying the same game types in the same locations over and over again. And lastly, Reach depended too much on forged maps, which aren't bad but just can't match real dev-made maps. Though these are, in my eyes, pretty big flaws, Reach is able to partially make up for this because the maps are competent and fun, and because of Forge World, Spire, and Boneyard, Bungie's biggest, greatest, and most versatile maps. Were it not for Forge World, Reach would have lost a lot more points here. Category 1, 7 out of 10. For weapons, vehicles, and balancing, this is where a game is a lot different than its predecessors. It's a prequel, which means the technology is going to be quite different. Well, since Bungie wanted to return where they started, they tried to recreate a game similar to Combat Evolved. Health packs are back and dual wielding is gone. I remember my disappointment with the lack of dual wielding, and to this day I still think it was the wrong move. If Halo 3 could balance equipment and dual wielding, Reach could have done the same with armor abilities. Reach was the first game in the series to actually take away more sandbox elements than it added, which is disappointing no matter which way you slice it. We lost the Chopper, Hornet, Prowler, Elephant, and in return got the Revenant, Falcon, and Rocket Hog. We lost the Mauler, Beam Rifle, Brute Shot, Missile Pod, Spike and Firebomb grenades, Carbine, SMG, BR, Sentinel Beam, and Flamethrower. In return, we got the Plasma Launcher, Concussion, Focus, and Needle Rifles, Plasma Repeater, Grenade Launcher, and DMR. Being the last Halo game made by Bungie, it was stupid that it didn't have as many sandbox elements as 3. With so many possibilities, with one last hurrah, they really should have gone all out here. But again, what Reach does have is all extremely fun to use. And the Falcon is without a doubt one of the greatest vehicles in video game history. And I think we can all agree the Needle Rifle and Grenade Launcher are 2 of the best things Reach added. Balancing was another problem people had. As I said, the maps had to accommodate all the different armor abilities, which is hard to do, not to mention the dreaded fucking armor lock. Probably the worst decision Bungie ever made. It's a cool idea in theory, and it works in the campaign, but to have gunfights completely stop in their tracks is one of the most infuriating things about the multiplayer. The inclusion of reticle bloom caused a big stir, as well as an element of chance when engaging in a firefight, because sometimes you could just spam shots and get lucky. and if you didn't pace your shots, it was really annoying for the weapon to lose so much accuracy and to have your opponent get away. If you look at Reach as its own game, the balancing isn't terrible, but it's not what people expected from a new Halo game, and I gotta take that into account. Control in this game is solid, but not as fluid as Halo 2. Reach struggles in a few areas, and weapons, vehicles, and balance are arguably the most important. Category 2, 7 out of 10. Oh, but all the smack I just been talking on Reach thus far is gonna be flipped on its head, because the game offers the most variety out of any of the Halos. They went all out here. Nearly every game mode from the last 3 entries is back in full force, with a couple new ones. Custom game options were somehow increased, and Firefight was fully customizable. You could play it on the most ridiculous settings imaginable, and that's something no other Halo game has. And who could forget the armor customization? I couldn't tell you how much time I spent looking over my Spartan, mixing and matching pieces, colors, emblems, saving up for something I really wanted, only to level up and see another piece of armor I wanted to save up for. The only disappointing part was Reach didn't offer a lot of elite customization. Forge was even more refined, new objects there, and Forge World is just the coolest, most versatile map ever created in the franchise. Invasion is one of the more unique and fun game modes Halo has ever had. And I'll quickly mention the UI here, even though it's not necessarily related, but it's flawless. Navigating the menus, seeing your friends online, on the sidebar, I mean, it all flows together to create this gaming experience that offers an incredible amount of content and an easy way to access it all. It's hard to say anything bad about what Reach offered as a game. Despite it cutting a lot of sandbox elements, Reach easily gets a 10 out of 10 in Category 3. The skill gap and learning curve, the competitive and casual sides of the game were dumbed down quite a bit. It's not Halo 4-esque, but it's not as difficult to be really good at the game. You always have a get out of jail free card in your armor ability. The lack of even starts was a big controversy amongst the hardcore fan base. Bloom kinda fucked competitive play, and with no ranked playlists or ranking system, the game was mostly a casual experience. Now it does get points for not being brutally oppressive, but at the same time it doesn't gain points because high level play just wasn't as interesting as Halo 2 and 3. Seeing as how players can sprint and jetpack all over the place or hide with active camo meant map control was less important. Category 4, 6 out of 10. Reach's DLC basically had the same problem as 3, except for the fact that the game didn't force you to pay for a dedicated Forge map. Anniversary Map Pack was really freaking sweet if you're a big fan of Combat Evolved and down to drop the money. Unlike Halo 2 and Halo 5, the game launched with all the features intact and working properly. Had it not been missing a few genuine competitive playlists and legit ranking system, I'd call it a perfect launch. The issue in this category is innovation. The game simply took away more elements than it added, and I think most people would agree, even if you think Reach is the best. It didn't improve upon Halo 3's formula, rather it changed it. It's a prequel, so it has somewhat of an excuse. At the same time, it's the follow-up game to Halo 3, and thus it was expected Reach would innovate and add just like the last 2 games. So in Category 5, Reach gets a 7 out of 10. The overall fun factor for Reach greatly depends on whether or not you enjoy the gameplay. That sounds obvious, but this time it's a much more relevant point, because of the sheer variety it has. The game suffered in the competitive scene with the skill gap, map selection, and matchmaking forced players to choose armor abilities and loadouts. But you can't ignore that Reach simply offers far too many ways to play, nor could you forget the refined Forge, custom game options, and all of that. Overall fun factor for Halo Reach? 7.5 out of 10.
Beautiful, ain't it? Someone should take a picture. Nice work, by the way.
Halo 4, The Experiment. Woof. So now we arrive at the Black Sheep, and boy oh boy do I have some things to say about it. To be fair, for just a moment, were this a new IP, it wouldn't have had nearly as bad a rap. At this point, Bungie was gone, and 343 had taken over, giving us a brand new Halo game just 2 short years after Reach. And man, that extra year would have helped them out a lot. You thought Reach's maps were bad? Halo 4 will make you cringe. Don't get me wrong, there are some really cool maps here, Exile, Haven, Longbow. The biggest weakness of Halo 4's map selection ties into Category 2, which is that the weapon and grenade spawns are completely fucking random. The maps feel barren, empty, because there's hardly ever a reason to go looking for weapons or power-ups or anything. Also, because of loadouts, not even basic weapons are on the map, and because of this, map control power positions are nearly non-existent. So it turned Halo 4 into a cheap Call of Duty game where 99% of the time you're just looking for someone to shoot. It really is a chain reaction of bad decisions, because now that specific weapons don't spawn on the map, they start to blend together and all feel the same. The sword at the top of midship, the Spartan laser in the middle of standoff, the rockets on top of the pillar and chill out. The simple placement of these guns is what made Halo's maps feel unique, special, and different, because you knew these weapons were on the map and where they would spawn, thus making them highly contested areas. BTB really suffered here because even the large maps felt enclosed for vehicle combat. Exile is great, but just look at how little room you have to navigate. I mean, they feel cramped. How is it the maps in Combat Evolved felt so much more expansive than this? Another misstep was the lack of asymmetrical maps, like Last Resort, High Ground, which made the selection even worse. Movement in the other Halo games was pretty much the same except for reach, but this time every player has sprint and armor abilities, and any remakes of previous levels are ruined because they aren't to scale. Not to mention sprinting is so weird in Halo 4, you just feel like you're sliding all over the place. A first-person shooter can only be so fun if it doesn't have good, replayable, and unique maps, and that's where Halo 4 utterly dropped the ball. Category 1, 3 out of 10. Where did you go wrong, Halo 4? Well, let's talk positives here. The sticky detonator is really cool, the Mantis was a fucking awesome addition to the vehicle selection, and the railgun made you feel quite the badass, and, well, that's about it. I can't remember a game that created so many new weapons that looked awesome, only for them to fall flat on their face. The weapon selection is atrociously bad. A big part of that is you can spawn with anything that isn't a power weapon. This was the thing I hated most about Halo 4. Every gunfight is plagued by precision weapons and the goddamn bolt shot. They were fucking everywhere, and trying to use anything else or experiment with different combos was simply not viable because the balance was fucked. I mean, they were fun to use for the first couple weeks, but everyone soon realized how shallow they were and the gameplay overall. I will say the new armor abilities were pretty cool, satisfying to use. Had the rest of the game been made, well, better, I think this element would have shined a lot brighter. A minor but important note, the sound effects are nothing alike what they were in the past, making the game feel and sound like something that just isn't Halo. And what's worse is we lost even more weapons and vehicles than we did in Reach. Not to mention being able to spawn with a plasma pistol pretty much fucked up vehicle combat entirely. I don't care that there's perks to help with that, it's just shitty design. And that's another thing. You might remember when you hit a certain level you'd unlock a specialization, right? What the fuck is that about? You play the game longer than others and suddenly you're given an advantage simply for putting more time in? Are you serious? And then loadouts, man, loadouts. To be honest, this is a nice idea on paper. The idea of kill streaks in Halo is something I had always hoped for, but not like this. If you want loadouts and kill streaks in a Halo game, have 1 or 2 modes, that's it. And the rest of the game plays without them. Bungie should have done this, 343 should have done this. So the majority of the guns aren't fun to use or balance, the game lacks more sandbox elements than both the previous games, and the map design is centered around random weapon spawns, making Halo 4's gunplay the worst in the series. There's hardly any saving graces here, it's just fucking bad. Category 2, a pitiful 2.5 out of 10. I'm not going to knock points off for variety, because Halo 4 doesn't match or improve upon Reach. I give 343 a bit of a pass here because they were making a new Halo game, and it's unrealistic to expect a brand new developer to match the success of a seasoned veteran. That being said, Halo 4's variety in terms of gameplay is not bad. I'd say it's about average in terms of the core multiplayer. It wasn't until about a year later that Forge Island was released, which really screwed with the Forge community and custom games overall. Dominion is definitely Halo 4's highlight though, without a doubt the best thing it has to offer. It's so good, I was actually disappointed not to see it in Halo 5. Since Spartan Ops was something you could play with your buddies, I'll include it here. Let me just say, to replace Firefight with this was not worth it at all. It's not terrible. You can have some casual fun playing with your buddies. Now at first it was fun to customize your loadouts, perks, whatnot. Again, the good elements of the COD series could have worked well here, but the more you look at it, the more shallow it becomes. Apart from that, Halo 4 doesn't offer much that will wow you. It's kind of at that baseline average of what you'd expect from a Halo game. Category 3, 6 out of 10. Skill gap? Learning curve? Pick up a bolt shot and a precision weapon, you're good to go. 3 out of 10. The way Halo 4 innovated was infinitely worse than anything Reach had done. Customizable loadouts could have worked for 1 or 2 modes, but being the core of the multiplayer, that messed up the whole game. You want to talk Sprint? That's another thing. Just look at all the commotion Sprint has caused in the Halo community. Apart from that, nearly everything new to Halo 4 managed to make the game worse. They even somehow managed to ruin Infection by giving the infected these ridiculous designs and forcing them to use a sword at all times. It launched in a functional state, but the game was notorious for how quickly its population fell. And it's my belief the decisions made for Halo 4's multiplayer are the biggest reasons the series has had a fall from grace. Category 5, 2 out of 10. Despite all of this, Halo 4's multiplayer can still be fun. Only at the casual level. It's not the type of game that could maintain a player base, and I'd be lying if I told you I didn't have fun at all playing this back when it came out. This is a Halo game. The pieces are all there, so it still does have value. What you can say about Halo 4 is it switched up the formula and gave us something new. Might not be much, but it's some praise I'm willing to give. You could also argue 343 just continued what Bungie set up in Reach. However, if 343 had paid attention to the criticisms made about Reach, they wouldn't have made those same mistakes in 4. Unfortunately, the decisions to copy COD's formula while ditching the staples of the previous games left Halo 4 in a pretty unremarkable spot. Dominion is enjoyable, but the other games are just way more fun. Overall fun factor, 4 out of 10.
I don't know about you, but I usually like a little more intel with my intel.
Halo 5 Guardians, the revival? So now we move on to the last game, and 343's most recent entry. It's hard to judge Halo 5 at any one point in time because the game has had far more changes and updates to it than ever before. But let's take a look. Maps in Halo 5 were decent, but the game tried so hard to be competitive it often made maps without the unique elements of previous games. It also had no developer-made BTB maps, which is a real letdown and pretty much killed my desire to play that. Halo 5 relied heavily on remixes and recycled content to give the impression of a larger selection. Now later in the game's lifespan, 343 created many more unique maps, but they weren't there at launch, so that's going to affect the score. Movement is much more fluid, free, sprint is no longer like ice skating, and the Spartan abilities offer a lot of unique movement opportunities. Though as noted, these movement abilities are a nightmare to balance with the map design. I'd give Warzone some big points here, but the problem is it launched with 3 maps, and it took far too long for new Warzone maps to come out, so I quickly got tired of the mode. Category 1, 6 out of 10. Weapons and vehicles have a lot of good and bad here. On one hand, the game had a buttload of variants for Forge and Warzone. On the other hand, there is only one truly new vehicle, and all these variants added a lot of redundancy and complication. So much of the sandbox was locked behind rec packs, and it took a long time for them to put all the different variants into Forge. Halo 5 was able to balance the weapons from Halo 4 in a way that didn't make them overpowered or completely useless, though the binary rifle was far inferior to the other 2 snipers. Suppressor, bolt shot, and incineration cannon were all given lock-on abilities, which seems pretty redundant. The game was very much balanced, but the control is where Halo 5 suffers. Without an elite controller, it simply feels like you're at a disadvantage. Trying to manage thrusters, melee, reload, jumping, shooting, everything, it was the most complex in terms of control. Though with the amount of crazy awesome weapons you can use and how creative they got with them, Halo 5 gets an 8 out of 10 in Category 2. Variety is where the game shines and falters. Again, after all the updates, the features everyone expected were trickling in. Warzone was really fun for the first couple months, but lost its luster without the map variety to back it up. BTB was terrible. Theater became an absolute joke, and no split screen severely limited players' ability to enjoy the game with friends. But the biggest issue here is the inconsistency in variety. Throughout its lifespan, Halo 5 has never been able to settle on a selection of playlists, maps, and game modes, instead opting for adding and removing them at a whim. For a month or two we had shoddy snipes and team snipers, then they were gone. This has happened 100 times within the game's lifespan. Maps have been consistently tweaked, added, removed, making it nearly impossible to get accustomed to them and understand where all the weapons spawn. It was hard to ever feel contentment, like there was a point where Halo 5 was the way it was meant to be. The massive improvements to Forge can only go so far in providing new ways to play, and they can't cover the pitfalls of the multiplayer as a whole. Still, it is able to recoup from an otherwise bad score here. Category 3, 7 out of 10. Halo 5 returns to the competitive roots of Combat Evolved in Halo 2, but it does so with a much too heavy emphasis. The game is really not accessible to casual players, and if you take a break, it takes a lot of time to readjust to the controls and flow of the game. Halo 5 succeeded in creating a very competitive game with a huge skill gap and learning curve, but at the cost of sacrificing a lot of casual fun. Where Halo 2 could be just as fun for casuals as it was for competitive players, Halo 5 isn't able to recapture that perfect balance between two audiences, and thus it gets a 7 out of 10 in Category 4. Now this is where shit gets rough. Aside from MCC, Halo 5 launched in a worse state than any of the previous games, not because it was broken, but because it had barely any content. You couldn't even consider it bare bones, it was more like the dust of bones. To put things in perspective, Combat Evolved launched with 5 game modes, Halo 5 launched with 4. It doesn't matter which way you spin it, all the progress, features, and content that the series had built up to this point was just gone at release. What are fans supposed to think when all their favorite features they've been playing for over a decade are just gone? There's no longer split screen, and microtransactions have been added. Well, it left a pretty shit taste in my mouth for many months. I still played the game and had fun, but that was accompanied by feelings of when is the next update, when are we getting infection, griffball, etc. Any potential innovation in the mechanics or gameplay was heavily overshadowed by the game's sheer lack of anything, and oftentimes updates would break features or cause even more glitches to pop up. The fluidity of the gameplay, the 60 FPS returning to Combat Evolved's roots, it can only go so far when massive amounts of content and features are either totally missing or totally broken. MCC being literally unplayable is as bad as it gets, but this is the next worst thing, being nearly devoid of all the reasons people buy and play the Halo games. That is why it should come as no surprise, Halo 5 gets a 2 out of 10 in this category. If you enjoy Halo 5's gameplay at its core, all the new abilities, then you'll be able to enjoy a fiercely competitive game with a lot of nuanced strategies. Warzone was really fun and experimental, Breakout was cool, we got competitive ranking back, and many other good things would come in time through the updates. But that's really Halo 5's biggest flaw. It relied so much on upcoming content that people started to lose interest, and the inconsistent variety is something I just can't get over. It's these things that made Halo 5's multiplayer at odds with itself, an ultra-competitive game that can never find the right balance. I always have enjoyed Halo 5 despite all the videos I've made criticizing it, but that's exactly the point. There's far too much of this game to criticize. Overall fun factor, 7 out of 10.
I'm not so much hunting a Spartan as I'm hunting the Spartan.
So now it's time to stack these all up against each other and find out which Halo has the best multiplayer. Number 6. Halo 4, because of its overall bad design, radical change in formula for the worst, and attempt to steal COD's audience. Without a doubt, Halo 4 has the worst multiplayer in the franchise. Number 5. This is going to cause some controversy. Halo 5 takes the 5th spot. Even though the game is in a much better state now with all the updates, when you consider that as a series, the Halo games should build upon and add to the previous games, or at the very least, match the content of Halo 3, to see this game pull a massive 180 backwards in terms of content just sucked. The removal of split-screen co-op is unacceptable, and game-changing microtransactions made the game worse. Ideally, I wanted to put Halo 5 in the second or third best spot, but realistically it had so many problems that distracted from its great core gameplay. Number 4. Halo Reach. Reach suffers because of its map design and selection, lack of ranking system, and its departure from the fundamental designs of Halo, which shaped the series for the future. But it makes up for it by providing the greatest variety out of all the games at launch, and the way it managed to refine each and every one of these features, making it more accessible, is why the game is at number 4. Many people don't like the gameplay, but I feel the sheer variety it offered and improvements it made for all modes earns it the 4th best multiplayer. Number 3. Combat Evolved. This little guy changed the industry. It proved first-person shooters could work to great success on consoles. To this day, it's still one of the best party games to play with a group of friends, and many argue it has the most competitive multiplayer. CE is a classic, and nobody can argue the foundation it laid for FPS games. However, it's beaten by its older brothers. Number 2. Halo 2. CE might have changed consoles, but Halo 2 changed online gaming. Xbox Live was so crazy to experience back in the day, and it paved way for future FPS series to take root. It was majorly responsible for the success of MLG, and the origins of competitive esports could definitely be traced back to Halo 2. Add on to this the playable elites, new sandbox elements, and incredible map design, and Halo 2 rightfully earns spot number 2. And finally, the best multiplayer in the Halo franchise is none other than Halo 3. Because of its incredible innovations with Forge, theater, custom games, the addicting ranking system, incredible maps, additions to game modes, sandbox elements, customization, everything. Halo 3 simply had the most bang for your buck out of the series. It is a close call between this and Halo 2, but when you consider the skill gap in Halo 2 relies heavily on exploits and button combos, its somewhat faulty launch, and balancing issues, Halo 3 just narrowly manages to beat it for the top spot. So that's my analysis of every Halo multiplayer and how they stack up against each other. To avoid making this video being absurdly long, I can't cover literally everything about all the games, but let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. That's all I got for today. This is the Act Man signing out. Peace!